I was on the board of StumbleUpon. The CEO of StumbleUpon was Garrett Camp. Garrett was the founder of Uber. Now, after we had the exit with StumbleUpon, I get an email from Garrett. Hey, I'm doing this thing called Uber Cab, doing a small round. I was on a vacation kite surfing in Egypt at the time. And I replied, it sounds good. Let's get together when I go back. And I didn't follow up. He didn't follow up. And that became the most expensive vacation of my life.
Welcome to Born to a Unicorn. We are here with Ariel Poler. He's a legendary Silicon Valley angel investor, entrepreneur, mentor, known for backing some of the most transformative startups of the past 3 decades. He has had over 40 successful exits, including over a dozen unicorns. Ariel founded the first web analytics company, Nielsen iPro, and was a member of Strava, StumbleUpon, Link Exchange, Audio, and Achieve Financial, among others. Some of the most recent investments include high flyers like Vercel, Limitless AI, and Thumbback. His most recent focus has been in human augmentation, topic that everybody is talking about. Nobody knows a lot of it, but we have here Ariel, who will give us a little bit of insights on the topic, and mental health. With Stanford Dr. David Spiegel, Ariel co-founded Reverie Health to make the clinical benefits of hypnosis widely accessible. Ariel's insight and mentorship had shaped the startup ecosystem, making him a key figure in the Silicon Valley evolution. It's a pleasure and a great honor, Ariel, to having you here.
Thank you for having me. Delighted.
So a lot of things to talk with you, man. You've been in everything. You're one of the investors that I mostly admire. And as I normally tell you, it's like you have an algorithm in your head, right? Because the percentage of conversion you have on unicorns, including Twitter, right?
Yeah, I was involved with Audio, as you mentioned, where we incubated Twitter. So I worked with Evan on the early days. Yeah.
So you incubated Twitter. That's crazy because at the beginning, I remember even when I started using Twitter, I was using Twitter. It was like, what is this for? At the beginning of 2000, like 7, 8. What is this for?
2006, 7, yeah.
Yeah, but you saw it coming.
Oh, yes and no. I mean, all of us, to be true. I mean, so Audio was one of the early podcasting companies, and that was an example of being too early because obviously, as you know, podcasting is huge now. Mm-hmm. Yet back then, we couldn't get it to work. Technology was not there. The infrastructure was not there. So Evan said to the team, hey, fool around, spend time, come up with alternative projects. And Jack, who was an employee at Audio, came up with Twitter. And we were like, yeah, this is interesting. This is promising. Let's explore it some more. But it was not obvious at the time that like, oh my God, this is going to be huge. And initially it was SMS only, text messaging.
Okay.
And again, it had some initial traction, yet only when it was open to the web is when it really exploded. So yeah, no, it's one of those things that is always in hindsight, but early on, we liked it, but I don't think anybody imagined what it was going to become. When we asked Jack, it's like, the first example was something like, yeah, I'm sharing with my friends that I'm eating a tuna sandwich. It was something like that. We're like, really? But yeah, we know the rest is history.
And I remember that for many years, they didn't even have like a business model. And it was like, for most people, it was like, what is this company going to do, right? But many investors were backing up this company when like you. And normally, software as a service company, you start like in this case, well, it's a social network. You start like very, with slow pace. And then at some point, like, spikes. Do you remember how it was with Twitter?
Yeah. And by the way, I was involved in the early days when it was part of Audio. I actually did not remain involved once it got spin out, unfortunately. Okay. I was involved with another SMS company, and I've always been very, very conservative as far as not working with competitive projects.
Okay, got it.
And had I known, I would have left the other company and gone to Twitter. But I mean, I remained involved in it and knew what was going on. There was an initial surge that it was modest, as I said, in SMS. And yeah, it's one of those things that if you see, well, if this takes, I mean, with consumer applications, from a business model standpoint, if you're going to reach tens of millions of people, then usually you can make it work. So that was a little bit of the bet. It was like, well, look, if tens of millions of people are using this, we'll make it work. Let's not worry about that yet, which I think was a reasonable thing. And also you had Evan Williams, who had started Blogger, who was already very wealthy, funding this initially. When he got spun out of audio initially, Evan is like, look, I like this, I'm going to fund this. And then he started to get traction and other people. And Andreessen Horowitz, I think, was the first external backer. I mean, they I think probably were some of the early ones who saw what it could become. And then, yeah, as I said before, it was when it was open to the web that it exploded. And then it's crazy because it was one of those things that kept having problems, kept going down, all sort of issues. You might remember the Twitter well, but it was just so compelling from the user standpoint that it was like, it was almost like it couldn't be killed even if we tried.
Wow,
of course we were not trying.
Of course not, right? That's interesting. Let's get back to the original topic that I really want to talk with you. That is, it's really hard to identify a potential future success, right? A future unicorn. But you hit like how many unicorns?
I don't know, about a dozen or so.
I mean, that's a lot, Ariel.
Yeah.
So how do you evaluate companies? What's what you're interested in when you talk with someone?
Yeah. So I have to confess, the prospect of the project becoming a unicorn is not at all my top priority. Quite honestly, here is roughly the way I think about it. So if I meet someone, an entrepreneur, at the end of the meeting, I ask myself, did I enjoy that? Did I have fun? Do I want to do more of that? Because historically, I've been very actively involved with this project. You know, at Audio, I was spending a day a week. At Strava, at many of these companies, I would go in there, roll up my sleeves, and spend a lot of time. And I would only wanted to do that if that was a pleasure, good experience. So it's like, now, having a good experience relates to other things that are correlated with success, because having a good experience means that the entrepreneurs are saying things that you agree with, or that at least are interesting and you would think are worthwhile discussing. Means that the entrepreneurs are listening to you and are being receptive, and that you feel you can add value to them. So feeling that I can work well with them, feeling that I can add value. I've passed on some projects where it's just something like, what do you need? And they say, oh, we need partnership with this type of industry players. And I don't have any networks. I'm like, look, I'm not going to get involved here. How can I help you? So feeling that I can add value, that's a win-win, because it makes me feel good, but it also helps the company. Definitely scale. And scale is correlated with big success, right? If I look at something and it cannot impact and help a lot of people, then I'm less interested. So that's definitely criteria.
What do you mean by scale?
Well, it depends on the segment, right? But, for example, I'm a fanatical foiler and I do a lot of water activities. And sometimes I've been pitched, hey, we want to do this project, which is related to the stuff you like. And I'm like, yeah, but this is like a niche. How many people are going to do this? From a business standpoint, it just doesn't make sense for me. So scale means that if it's consumer, it better be tens of millions of potential consumers that could benefit. If it's companies, again, not a tiny niche. The opposite of niche, I guess, would be, can it? And then from that would translate into, can this company have revenues in the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars? I look a lot at, is this worth doing? Is this something? And this has changed. In the early days, I was involved with some companies, like AdMob, which became a unicorn, or Optimizely, which pioneered, A/B testing. And I wouldn't do those companies now, because now I tend to focus more on just social impact. And it doesn't mean that it needs to be a nonprofit, but it just means like, okay, is this really making the world a better place, people's lives better, and so on? So I look at that. more than I used to. Yeah, I think those are the things. I mean, there's one other thing which has to do with business model. There's sometimes I hear something that I'm like, yeah, this is great, but I just cannot imagine how this is gonna be a functional business. How is this a unit economics or anything? So I don't need all the details, but at least a high level understanding of, yeah, there's enough value being delivered to the customers with enough differentiation that you can make economics work. Sometimes, yeah, recently somebody was pitching me something that felt like something good, but it was so commoditized. I'm like, I just don't see how you can really charge a whole lot for this. So yeah, you want to see that it makes sense.
Okay, so listening to you right now, what it comes to my mind is it seems like it's not like you just have like a brilliant algorithm in your mind, but the capacity of conversion of hitting so many unicorns and companies seems to be related at first sight with your involvement, active involvement in the company. Do you think that could be a differentiator in this success?
Yes and no. I don't think that I am the defining factor. I have been the defining factors in any of these companies that you could say, oh yeah, Strap was really successful because of the help that Ariel gave. My help to them helps in the following way, which is I work with, to take the Strava example. So Mark Gainey and Michael Horvath, the co-founders, I was on the board of their first company, Kana Software, and which was a huge success. It was a Salesforce equivalent of the late 90s. We took the company public, unicorn, actually $11 billion market cap at some point. And when they went to do the next project, they called me, say, Ariel, you are an awesome board member. You added a lot of value at Kana. We're doing another one. We want you back. And so in this case, I had two unicorns and the second one because I was value added in the first one. But the same thing happens with the friends and the acquaintances of the people that I help. So I think the fact that I'm helpful and that I value and that I hopefully am somebody who entrepreneurs enjoy working with helps me more in the sense of helping great entrepreneurs want to work with me, as opposed to I'm the one who's really making a difference. Because I think most of these companies would have been successful even without my help. It might have been harder, it might have been different. But yeah, I don't think, I think it's hard for any board member or investor claim that they're the ones really.
But I don't completely agree with that, Ariel, because I think through Endeavor, I had a board of advisors. Okay. And I remember that it made a lot of difference. And
Sure, it makes a huge difference. Yeah, I'm not saying, I mean, I agree, a great board really helps, really makes a difference. I like to believe that I do that, not to the point, at least in my opinion, where it's the main factor that separates success from failure.
But, a fresh mind, someone like you with a huge background, a lot of experience, and a fresh mind, I think, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're like running and trying to tie your shoes on the same time, right? So it's like going to the short term, trying to get normally back to the long term, which is hard. But in my opinion, the board helps you don't forget about the medium and long term.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in having great boards. I've been on some amazing boards and I've had some, like I've been on two boards with, say, Mike Moritz from Sequoia. I mean, such value added individual to have. And yeah, definitely game changer. So without a doubt, a good board members, David Karlik, another amazing board member I've been on the board with, make a difference. Yeah, I'm not going to argue.
Yeah. So there's like a lot of factors that we mentioned,
Yes.
right? The board member is important. You mentioned also the entrepreneur, the scalability of the project. What's the weight that do you think has the luck in all of this?
I think it's case by case. I mean, I've seen situations where entrepreneurs have been at the right place at the right time and where arguably luck has played an incredible part. I've seen other entrepreneurs that have been unlucky time after time, but they are just so committed and so strong that eventually they get lucky. One thing I think I was mentioned to you offline is that what I've also seen is an entrepreneur who, let's say, initially gets lucky, but then they end up in a place. Yeah, let me give you an example. Now, I'm not going to suggest, for example, that Mark Zuckerberg got lucky, but once you're the CEO of Facebook, imagine your experience. Imagine everybody you interact. Imagine everything you learn. All these great board members, investors, partners. You do that for a few years, and it's like such an amazing education, preparation. So even if you are not the absolute best entrepreneur to begin with, you end up being like the absolute best entrepreneur just because of the experience. Or even a more extreme example, like imagine like being the president of the United States and everything you learn and everything you do. I mean, that has to help you a ton. Mm, It's a combination. The other thing is, if you do something really good, either because you were lucky or because you were super strong at execution, then that opens more opportunities for you. Like in my case, because I was, for example, involved with Strava, then after that, other people might reach out to me and say, hey, your experience there is very relevant what we're doing here. I actually had that with audio. Because of what I had done in audio, then somebody approached me about StumbleUpon, and one thing leads to the other. So yeah, it's a combination. I think I've definitely seen people that have succeeded without too much luck, and the other way around. I don't know, case by case.
What's the phrase that you told me before you started the podcast? You told me something about success.
Success breeds success. Without a doubt, you see it. I mean, I've seen, without naming names, I know, for example, somebody who just totally randomly invested in one of the most high-profile companies in the valley in the last 20 years and made a name for himself through that. And then that opened so many doors, and eventually he became a great investor. Arguably there was a lot of luck involved. Again, as I said before, the opposite also happens.
So with many people that are investors that I talk with, they tell me that they believe that venture capital is an art. I'm a math person, so normally I say it's not an art, it's math. What do you say? Art, math, or both?
I think venture capital is a very broad term, so I think it's too much of a generalization.
Okay.
It's a little bit like, I'm from Venezuela. You're also not from the US. And sometimes you hear expressions like, oh, Americans are like this and Americans are like that. And I'm like, Americans? Who's an American? I mean, there's 300 million Americans. You can't compare someone from, New York to someone from San Francisco, etc. So I've seen VCs that tend to be very much intuition driven, and in a way that you could compare more to art in terms of how they decide who to get involved with and how to do it. And the other end of the spectrum, there are VCs that are super data analytics driven, and they look at every number and so on, and everything in between. I think historically, the best VCs that I've worked with tend to be less number driven and more pattern matching driven, people driven, and so on. Whether that means that it's an art or a science, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because what I normally say is when people say that something is an art or they have a additional sense, right? I believe it is just past experiences turned into a mental algorithm, right? If you have a very bad experience invested in a specific industry, your brain generates some connections, and it's like, next time I listen to someone pitching me about this, I will be a little bit more, I don't know what this.
Pattern matching.
Yeah.
But of course, some people leverage technology for pattern matching, which I think is really, really smart, especially now with AI. So, but yeah, definitely, I would, most good investors have learned from their past experience, both good and bad.
Fabulous. And so basically, we know that there are different things that has to match together in order to be a good investor, right? Let's go to the other side, to the entrepreneur. What are the kind of things that when someone comes for you, give you a pitch or whatever,
right?
What are the things that you look at and are important for you as an entrepreneur? Many people, they're trying to get a company to become millionaires, right? And most of the VCs that I speak with is like, it's a horrible idea to start a company if you wanted to make money.
Yeah. I tend to gravitate or like entrepreneurs who are mission and passion driven. So they're not there, like you say, oh, I want to make money, but it's like, here's a problem that I want to solve, or here is an opportunity that I see, and they care about it. And it's less about making money. It's also often less about a technology or a product in search of a solution. Is that I tend to avoid those. And there are lots of those where somebody came up with a little invention or creation. And okay, we can use this. It's more about real world solving a problem, addressing an opportunity that's out there. So I think that's really important. I mean, a few other things I like, or at least for me, it's important that the entrepreneur be very honest, humble, that they know what they don't know. I mean, a huge red flag for me is when I just hear somebody say things and I just realize that they're exaggerating what they know. They're exaggerating. I mean, sometimes there are little details that they might even put on a deck that are not quite accurate to make them look a little better. And immediately I go like, okay, if I cannot trust, that tells me I cannot trust what you tell me. So then how am I going to work with you if I cannot, I mean, how do I know that this is where you draw the line? So there's that. I mean, there's also, which is, I want people that I feel, and this is just personal judgment, that are good people I want to have over for dinner, people that I've passed on some great projects because I remember meeting the entrepreneur and going, this thing is going to be very successful. This person is really great execution person. I want to spend time with him. And, that's personal. Some other investors go like, oh, I'll just throw my money there and kind of like let it ride. Yeah, I mean, some of those are the kind of thing. Going back to the people thing, characteristic, the best, I would say, the factor that correlates more strongly between the company's characteristic and success is team building. So you see it over and over again. The companies, the startups that build the amazing teams, high correlation with huge success. And the teams get built from the top. So you want entrepreneurs who you feel are going to attract them amazing talent and retain it.
So basically there is something on, and it's understandable, right? So the more passionate the entrepreneur, the easier. I didn't like wine, but it was a TV show that it was a person talking about wine in a way that was so passionate that I started drinking wine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's what the amazing and you see that, for example, with recruiting, where they're trying to recruit this person that already has an amazing job. It's like there's no reason why they should leave and go to the startup, but some amazing, inspired entrepreneurs convince them to drop what they're doing and go work with it.
And that's something. That's why probably it's that most venture firms or venture capital investors that I talk with, they told me, just money is a red flag. But if the passion and what they want to build. And another interesting thing is that normally people see, venture capital as, a financial person, whatever. But most of the people I talk with, and you just mentioned that as well, is how we can generate impact in the world. So that's interesting because normally if you're like 100% a financial person, it's like, I don't care about anything, just build something that makes money, right? But in most cases, and it's not like just people say it, but you see in the investment they in what companies they invest, right? A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Esteban Sofni, and he's investing in like education, health, work. So it's like this idea of let's change the world as well, right?
And it also depends on where in your career you are. So I think what you tend to see is and both entrepreneurs and investors, after a certain amount of success, then you start to raise the bar about, okay, I don't need to worry about the money anymore. What do I worry about? What's important? Early in the careers, in general, you tend to see less of that, which is understandable.
Let's go a little bit to, I know that we still have like 12 minutes. So I want to be very efficient on that. Augmented Humanity, Ariel.
Yeah, so a few years back, I started looking at the term, I use the term human augmentation. It's just technology that augments our capabilities beyond our natural abilities. So some examples is an exoskeleton that might help you run or hike faster than you would otherwise would be able to. Haptic devices that would give you information so that you could, for example, have extra senses. A company I was involved with, Neosensory, does that. You can, through your skin, get information about anything like infrared, the market. In the case of people that have deficiencies, deaf people could learn to hear through their skin. So abilities that are not natural, if you will, neural interfacing, hearables that, some of the things we're starting to see really become somewhat mainstream. Hearables and augmented vision. So I did a bunch of that. I think I'm a science fiction fanatic. So I think that's where I was coming from. That took a twist for me because when I was exploring that, I was at an event called Brain Mind, which is a great organization that was started by MIT and Stanford. And I met Dr. David Spiegel. David is an associate chair of psychiatry at Stanford. And he's a world expert on the clinical use of hypnosis. And he showed me how with hypnosis, he could help people with addiction, with chronic pain, with anxiety, with sleep disorders. And long story short, we built an app where we packaged what he does at Stanford into an app. To my surprise, it works almost as good as him in the office. And now tens of thousands of people are using it to get help with all these conditions. So that's not about human augmentation. It's more about mental health and so on. But I became passionate about the impact that this could have. And that's where I've been spending a lot of time lately.
It's going to be more complex for science fiction to create fiction.
Absolutely. We're living in the future. I tell you, within 1 week last year, I got my Apple Vision Pro, which was mind-blowing. I wrote a Waymo, and what was the third thing I did? And then I did a third thing that I'm like, oh my God, we're totally living in the future. I mean, all these things happening. It's crazy. Yeah.
Well, I'm dyslexic, and the GPT models
exactly. And that was the third thing. I mean, GPT is, my God,
are like changing my life. I mean, it's incredible because when I write an email, I be dyslexic, I write it 3 times, right? Then I put it in the outbox. I never send it. Stays there because I don't feel comfortable. In every class room, 20% of the kids are dyslexic. So it's not like a small group, right? So basically, with Augmented Humanity, the human brain that has this capacity of creating everything can do like way more than we did before. It's not like we are competing with machines. Seems more like we are using machines to be better. Is that, do you agree with that definition?
I agree. That's most of what's positive and exciting. And we've been using technology for hundreds, if not thousands of years to improve our lives. I mean, you're wearing a pair of glasses. I mean, that's a technology that's been around for quite a while. We just now make them a lot better, if you will. So yeah, the combination, in my opinion, is what's most exciting. That was, human augmentation. So the technology that augments us. And I think that it also opens lots of possibilities. I love the fact that with AI, yes, there's risks and there's going to be upheaval, and some occupations are not going to become viable. I tend to be an optimist and believe that the new endeavors, the new possibilities will be even greater.
Ariel, let's go to the rapid fire. Quick questions, quick answer, okay?
Okay.
Let's go. Biggest almost investment that you regret passing on?
So as I mentioned before, I was on the board of StumbleUpon. The CEO of StumbleUpon was Garrett Camp. Garrett was the founder of Uber.
Okay, got it.
Now, after we had the exit with StumbleUpon, I get an email from Garrett. Hey, I'm doing this thing called Uber Cab, doing a small round. Normally, I would have put $25,000. I was on a vacation kite surfing in Egypt at the time. and I replied, it sounds good. Let's get together when I go back. And I didn't follow up. He didn't follow up. And that became the most expensive vacation of my life. Yeah. What can I say?
I hope you enjoy it.
It was very enjoyable. And, and here's the other thing I would say. As an investor, you cannot focus on your misses. If you focus on your misses, you totally depressed. I passed on Twilio, for example. Think about it. That was another huge one. So yeah, you got to focus on the ones that worked out. And as long as there's enough of those.
what's the best podcast, book, or any resource that you could like recommend to any aspiring entrepreneur or investor?
Wow, there's so much good stuff, and but I have found that the entrepreneurs that I've enjoyed working with the most, as far as the information they have, it tends to be not the broad Silicon Valley or even, I don't know, culture information. It tends to be a specific personal interest of them. For me, if an entrepreneur is listening to all the great podcasts, whether it's, the Tim Ferriss or Hurman or Jay Shetty, take your pick, that's great. But what differentiates them is like, well, they're really into nano optics. I don't know, I'm making this up. And they hear this news, they receive this newsletter or this podcast from the experts on that one field. Yeah, my reaction is go deep on the stuff you really like. And that shouldn't be something I know anything about.
Right now we are with a new company trying to solve, problems or issues around health and humanity. If you weren't in this industry right now, in which other industry do you see yourself working on?
Wow. I mean, in general, as I've said, for a few years now, I've really tried to spend the bulk of my time with having as much impact as possible. Again, this is supposed to be rapid fire. So I would say if I wasn't working in mental health, which I think is really important, I would most certainly be working in some kind of nonprofit in the areas maybe of criminal justice reform, maybe in extreme poverty, maybe in early childhood education in the third world, those big problems that I think need to be solved.
Sounds like it would be great for those areas to have someone like you helping on that, maybe in the future, right? What's one counterintuitive belief you hold about startups?
I don't know if this is counterintuitive, but something that most people probably might not agree with has to do with speed. I think that speed and competition, a lot of people are like, go fast, because otherwise our competitors are going to get there first. And it's true that there's some situations where the competitors can take it away from you, but those are the 1%. Those are like in the case of Uber or eBay, but for 99.9% of the projects, it doesn't matter what your competitors do. And it doesn't even matter that you move super fast. It matters that you do it well, that you are strategic, that you have a great product, that you have a good underlying team and business. So yeah, I sometimes see companies or entrepreneurs that focus too much on reacting to competition, moving really quickly, as opposed to just steady going forward. A great example of a company that was criticized a lot for maybe lack of speed was Strava. Yet, it's obviously they had the right product, the right approach, and have been incredibly successful after a really long time. So yeah, that would be one thing.
How about the mental health factor? We are finally listening more and more about mental health and entrepreneurs. When I was younger, I remember that everything was like, if you want to succeed, is full life, right? Full life. And then now you're listening, you're a human, take care of your health.
Yeah, totally.
How important do you think is mental health in success?
Fundamental. I've seen people get burned out. So without a doubt, you have to have a balance. And it's a myth that you cannot do it. I'm not saying it's easy, but and this ties in with my previous point. I've seen entrepreneurs who like literally sleep in the office nonstop. And some people can pull it off and maybe balance their life some other way, maybe by going intense for a while, then taking a break. But I've also seen entrepreneurs, sometimes older, that they have families, that they build teams with families, and that focus more on efficiency and doing the right thing and not on being in the office 24/7. So yeah, absolutely. Super important to take care of yourself, to do the basics, to exercise, to have a good social life, to be outdoors and so on. And I think it's very doable. Now you have to be careful, right? There's certain products or industries where that becomes more challenging. So you have to align. And that's the other thing I would say for entrepreneurs. Make sure you align your aspirations, entrepreneurial aspirations, with your own reality, and in terms of the time you can spend, the financial situation. Obviously, entrepreneurship is often, if it's starting from scratch, you're not going to have a big salary. All those things need to be aligned.
You talked about it's not going to be easy, right? I remember someone told me this phrase that is, I didn't become an entrepreneur because it was easy. I did it because I thought it was going to be easy.
Wow, I don't know. I cannot imagine anyone thinking it's going to be easy, but it can still be a lot of fun.
The media normally says, this guy started a company in a garage and now, sold it for $1 billion, right? That's what the media wants.
And they skip the 10 years worth of like sweat and tears. Yeah, it's those overnight successes that are never that.
Okay, we are on time, but any closing insight and recommendation you can give to an aspiring entrepreneur or a venture capitalist that you think like this is going to help you if you're going on this direction?
I guess what comes to mind on both fronts is in the world of startups, there's a lot of unpredictability. Things, particularly in the short term. I think, long term, if you stick with something, hopefully you can get there. But short term, there's a lot of unpredictability. So one thing I always tell entrepreneurs is make sure that you're working on something that you really care about, that you want to spend time on, that ask yourself the following question. If this project fails after 2 or 3 years, but in the meantime, I met a bunch of great people, learned a lot, put myself in a better place for the next project, would you still do it? And the answer should be yes. The answer should be, I'm doing this, I'm giving it my best, I'm learning, I'm meeting with people. If you're looking at it going like, okay, this needs to succeed short term, that's a very risky thing. I would try to avoid that. I would try to say, well, can I find something where that's not the case? Can I find something where I feel strongly enough about it, about learning, about working with people, that even if it doesn't succeed in the next few years, it will be something that's going to move me forward. So that would be my suggestion.
Great advice. Ariel, Pollard, thank you very much for being here with us.
My pleasure. Thank you. Take care.